Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Lori Smith of Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Wednesday morning, June the 22nd. I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And the chat room's open. I did pop the link into there. We're looking at positive affirmations from Robert Burney's website at www.joy to me and you. That's www.joy2meu.com. Great information there. I hope everybody will check it out. He has lots and lots of good information all throughout his website. He's got a site index, and you can go through and scroll through there and see what he's got. He just has tons of information. He's done a lot of work there, and it's worth checking out that website, so I hope everybody will do that. We've been talking about his stuff for about, at least 2 months, probably 2.5 months now. But, thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. I'm not a counselor or a therapist. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own shows. And I just wanted to be one more voice, speaking out against child abuse and standing up for child rights with all the other voices out there. And I want to be another voice of encouragement for survivors. So, that's why I'm doing these shows. I'm not a counselor or therapist. You have to listen at your own discretion. I'm talking about abuse, and abuse is a sensitive subject for many and most people. And so you have to know what's good for you to listen to. You have to be the judge of what you listen to and make sure that it won't bother you, or that type of material or information won't make you uncomfortable, because it ultimately is your discretion. So listen to any of my shows and all of my shows at your own discretion. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows, because I believe in protecting children at all times, and you need to learn how to keep yourself safe online and age appropriately. These shows are not necessarily for younger children, and I think that I don't know how young the children are who are listening, who may be listening to the show, right? So you have to, if you're under the age of 18, just have an adult listen to the show with you, and they can help you make a decision whether you should be listening, right? I'd appreciate that. So we'll get right into this morning, and we're looking at positive affirmations, taking a look at what Robert Burney has to say about positive affirmations. And Robert Burney he's a codependence therapist. He's also a grief counselor. He's an author. He's written a book called Codependence, The Dance of Wounded Souls. He's a spiritual teacher, and he's got a lot of good stuff here. And positive affirmations is where we left off yesterday, talking about setting boundaries with codependence. And so he has excerpts from his book. And he says, positive affirmations are one of the single most powerful and vital tools in the recovery process, he says. And codependence is a condition caused by growing up in a shame-based, emotionally dishonest society, which teaches us false beliefs about the nature and purpose of life. And he says, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, not shameful, sinful human creatures who have to earn spiritual salvation. So that's what he's written. And he says what we need to do is to learn to accept that state of grace. And the way we do that is to change the attitudes and beliefs within us that tell us that we are not lovable. And positive affirmations, he says, are so vital in recovery because we all have a critical parent voice inside that judges and shames us, that negatively affirm us hundreds of times a day. It takes a lot of reprogramming to start accepting that we are lovable and unconditionally loved. And so that's from his book. And he says, all my experiences are opportunities to gain more power, clarity, and vision. We looked at all this yesterday. He says, I have a right to ask for and expect something in life, and comparison of myself with another is meaningless. So we were talking about that yesterday. And then we'll pick up right here where we left off. And he says, I am the center of my universe. My world revolves around me. That's a positive affirmation that we can say. I am the center of my universe. My world revolves around me. And so basically I think that so many times people in general don't even have to be abused to possibly feel that, we don't count, and that, we're just these puppets in a play, and that, everything that happens to us is I don't know, many people have different ideas of what life is all about, and we probably all have our own ideas, really, because I don't know how anyone can be on the same exact page. But the thing is that if I say to myself, I am the center of my universe, my world revolves around me, if I say that to myself, it very well could promote that I would take better care of myself, and that I would spend some more time looking into my own life and my own, who I am, in this world, a spirit being in a human flesh body. And so I think by saying that, I'm the center of my universe, I think that just allows people to get in touch with themselves. You know what I mean? That's what I think. I'm not into metaphysics and all this. I'm a Christian, right? And but I can kind of, so on some level, relate to what he's saying and what he's doing, because I know that it's all about positive stuff, like trying to create a positive environment and trying to, positive affirmations. I mean, that's exactly what that is just trying to and attempting to negate some of the, to undo some of that damage, some of those negative thought processes, those negative things that we tell ourselves every day. Oh, I can't do it, or oh, I'm not smart enough, or anything that would hold us back. Oh, I'm not, I don't have the skills, or whatever, or I don't have what it takes like the next guy. These types of things where we're comparing ourselves to somebody else all the time, putting ourselves down, right? Many times children who are abused, myself, speaking about myself, have been told horrible things like, oh, you're just stupid, or you'll never amount to anything, or you're just useless, or just things like that, that kind of stay with you as you get older, and especially if you hear that over and over again, and it was said with intent to hurt. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a parent can make a mistake and say things and kind of hurt their children, not meaning to, by saying something, and then, go back and say, look, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. But when your parents do that to you on a regular basis and they mean it, you sort of grow up thinking, maybe I'm stupid, maybe I am worthless. And that's where I was at, growing up in this home where there was really no positive, constructive criticism. It was all very negative and bad. But that's because my parents didn't know how to deal. They didn't know how to handle, raising children, and they didn't know how to handle being in that relationship that they had. And they didn't, they were good to their friends, but just not good to their family. They would never put their friends down. But, the family, like they didn't mind hurting the family. They would always be good to their friends, right? They had lots of friends. My parents had tons of friends, and people liked them, and then they'd come home and they'd trash their family, right? And that's sad, but that's what most abusers do. And not all. Some abusers actually are not fun to live with as neighbors either, because they just abuse everybody around them. But my parents weren't like that. They were really good to people outside of the family. But the people within the family, they were just, my siblings and myself, was just horrible. It was just because they had so much hatred for each other, that they couldn't deal with trying to set up or promote any kind of positive behaviors within the home. And so outside of the house, they had to behave themselves, had to straighten up if they wanted to have friends. So they knew how to be nice when they wanted to. But the thing is I think that Robert Birdie, what he's done here, is a really good job of presenting some real positive stuff, whether you're a Christian or not. Like, he says, the Christ, Goddess, Spirit within me is creating miracles in my life here and now. So whatever your belief system is, it's a higher power, right? It's the one, it's the God, for me, I know who my God is, right? But everybody probably knows who their God is, And so whether it's the Christ, the Goddess, the Spirit within me is creating miracles in my life here and now. And that's another positive affirmation people can say. I'm a Christian, so, I would quite often, and not only just say it, but believe it, that I believe that God is working on my behalf, and that He's here for me, and He's always been here for me. And I used to curse Him when I was little. I used to curse Him because I didn't think He was here with me, and I didn't think He was here for me, and I didn't think He was doing the right thing. And I just had this a really bad view of God, and when I was growing up, and then when I got older, I started to realize that God is good. God represents everything that is good: light, truth, love, compassion, mercy, and everything that is good. So if God is good, then there's just no way He can be bad, because He's unchangeable, unmovable, and never changes. So if He's good all the time. If He's love all the time. If He's on my side, He's on my side all the time. So I believe that there's a constant. There's this one constant with God, and that He truly is in my life working miracles. And I see this in my life, my daily life. You know what I mean? So I see this in things that are happening in my life, my world, which is really quite interesting. And a lot of people wouldn't even maybe recognize these things, but I do, because obviously I'm living my life, so I see what's going on. And I see stuff that's happened that, it's really quite interesting. And I think He's been there the whole time. I didn't realize that when I was growing up, but now I do. So, it's just a matter of changing our perceptions and allowing ourselves to open up and to really, to see these things, right? And not everybody's spiritual, but that's okay. I am, but I don't usually mix that with my shows because so many people who have been abused really have a hard time with that stuff. I know that I did. When I was growing up, I didn't want people praying for me. It really bothered me that when people would pray for me. And, just these things, because my dad was a Christian, and I talk about this all the time. My dad was a Christian, and he was a horrible man, and he would come home on Sundays and trash the family, verbally, emotionally, psychologically, and physically. And then he would feel great, because he was like, I'm going to get these sinners, this is my family, but I'm going to trash them, and I'm going to... And he used to say stuff like, I should kill you all, because God would be happy if I killed you all, and stuff like this. We had to listen to this. It was horrible. And, just watching the torment that my mother went through. And every Sunday was just this horrible day. And so spiritual, I didn't like Christians, and I didn't like the Bible, and I didn't want anybody praying for me, So I had a huge problem with Christianity, actually a huge problem with God. And so I don't usually mix that stuff with my healing journey here on the show because I know so many survivors probably still in that position of feeling the way that I did so many years, and because I recognize it and I understand it. But I know now that's really why I'm on my healing journey, 4 years ago. So I have a whole different way of looking at things now and a whole different view of who God is in my life and what I'm doing here and what my purpose is, and it wasn't to suffer. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't just to be this kid that was beaten and mistreated and treated horribly by a whole family full of people, and then made to feel bad about it later by saying that, you were so bad, you needed that, you deserve to be treated like that. There's no way a kid could be that bad to be treated like that. You know what I mean? Kids don't, you don't beat a child just because they spill water on the floor or something like that. You just don't do these things, or they come in the room with a look on their face. You know what I mean? My mother used to beat on me for no reason at all. So, these people, even if I had done something wrong, it doesn't warrant treating a child like that. But my family's so sick and twisted that they think that that's the way life is because they're warped because they grew up in the same home I did. And they refuse to get any help or change the way they feel and change the way that they see things. So, but I've completely changed the way I look at things, and I'm working on completely, negating every bad thing that my parents put on me, turning it into a positive in my life so that I can move on. You know what I mean? And that's the ultimate final goal would be to replace every single horrific feeling, thought, and everything else from my past with something good, that is good for me and beneficial for people around me, and that's my goal, and that's what I'm doing. And what it does is it leaves very little time for my family, you know what I mean? Because I'm busy on working on myself. So I guess I'm doing the thing where, I'm saying I am the center of my universe and my world revolves around me. So basically that's what I did is I had to cut my family off but that's just me. I wouldn't, I'm not suggesting people do that. It's a hard decision to make, and people would say, oh, that's so mean, and they, it's like, well, not necessarily, not when it's meaner that they would continue to drag me down through the mud because they won't get help. You know what I mean? That's meaner to me. That's being more mean to me. Cutting, making a decision to protect myself is really the best thing I could have done, and that's to protect my not so much my physical self. What are they going to do to me now? You know what I mean? They can't physically do anything to me now. I'm protecting my emotional boundaries, my psychological boundaries, right? So in order to do that, I can't hang around with them. So it's a choice that I made, but it's a protection measure for myself, so that we don't continue to destroy each other, because that's what we were doing our whole lives, was attempting to destroy each other. So that's the big. I wrote about that in my book, A Life of Death and Redemption. That's the main focal point, is the destruction, right? Because we were always trying to destroy each other, even the siblings, right? So nobody was helpful or trying to help each other. And then we had to kind of learn how to get along as adults so we didn't end up in jail. And so, as adults, we sort of would try to do the normal right things for each other, but, we inevitably end up tearing each other down emotionally, verbally, psychologically, because we don't know how to behave properly together, right? We were never shown how to do that. There's a lot of animosity, excuse me, my voice is just terrible today, but I'm just exhausted, as everybody can tell. Probably who's listening to the shows. But yeah, there was just a lot of problems. We couldn't just exist and coexist peacefully together, and so we still can't. Nobody's, except for me, is doing anything about it to change my behaviors, and so therefore I had to cut them off. And it's just the way that it goes. What it is sad because not only do they miss out on me, but I miss out on them. But the thing is I'm not going back to what I was doing with them before, which was to bring each other down and say these hurtful, horrible things and scream and rant and rave at each other at the top of our lungs, which is what we've always done to each other. And I'm not going back there. It evokes hatred in my heart. It evokes all kinds of issues that I'm working to get rid of. So I had to set my boundaries, and my boundaries are pretty firm. Actually, I'm very stubborn, and so my boundaries are set, and they are what they are. And they won't change because I've made up my mind, right? So, but we have to really work on whatever it is in our lives, that's going to help us, to get through this stuff, right? I mean, as an adult survivor of child abuse, I don't have to suffer and continue to suffer just because that's the path that my parents set up for me, and that's where I was 4 years ago with just thinking, how long do I have to suffer this? How long do I have to carry this baggage and this garbage around? It's just mainly just depression and being down about the whole thing and saddened about the destruction and the fact that I was never going to mean what I needed to mean to my parents, which is just for that they would love me and treat me right. It was never going to happen. You know what I mean? I can't go back and change the past, right? So I started to think, why do I have to feel like this for the rest of my life? What's making me think that I need to hold on to all of this? Is it just because it's comfortable for me or what? Because I was 41 years old and I was still thinking about killing myself, still wanting to self-injure, and, there was so many problems. I was able to hold a job and all that stuff, but I was just miserable. And I thought, man, do I have to be like that for the rest of my life? That was a big question for me. I started to ask questions just in my own mind, thinking, why do I have to feel like this the rest of my life? Can I not get some help? Can I not allow myself to have a good life? Like, what is going on? So I started to ask these questions, and within a short few hours, I made a decision that I was going to allow myself to heal, and allow myself to get help if I needed to and reach out, And, in doing so, what it did was it put a wedge in between me and my family. It wasn't just a book that I wrote. The book is just part of it, or going public with my story. That's just part of it. But what really drove the wedge in between me and my family was me asking those questions. Do I have to continue to take their garbage for the rest of my life just because we're blood relatives? It would be like a wife allowing her family to continue to abuse her, like whether it's a husband or older children or whatever, just because they're family. It's incredibly wrong. That's what people do. My mother allowed my dad to abuse her throughout their whole marriage. She could have got out. She was not tied up down in the basement. She was tied up in her mind, but she was not tied up in the basement. She could have gone any time. She had lots of help, and she had lots of people who would have got her out, including my older siblings, right? But she stayed because she thought that's what she had to do, right? So I had all these examples in front of me of what not to do, And I thought, man, I don't have to put up with their garbage, because they're my blood relatives. I really don't care if it's my dad or my sister or my brother. If they can't be decent in my life, to treat me decently with respect that I deserve because I'm treating them with respect, then they don't need to be in my life. And that's where it is. That's where it sits. That's where it will continue to sit forever, while I'm on the planet. It doesn't have anything to do with forgiveness. I had a message yesterday in my chat room, somebody saying, maybe it's time you forgave. I forgave them already. I had to, years ago. So in order for me to feel any kind of love in my heart for anybody, including myself, I had to forgive them, Forgiveness does not mean that you allow people to hurt you. You don't say, oh, yeah, okay, I'll forgive my husband. I'll just forgive him completely. Let's say you're living in a home and your husband just comes home and beats on you and treats you like crap and curses you and calls you names and verbally assaults you and emotionally assaults you. And then you say, okay, I forgive him, which is very important that, I think it's part of the whole thing, and that's why I did make a decision to forgive. But then to say, okay, I forgive him, and then allow him to continue to do that, or to abuse your children. It's like, okay, I forgive my wife, for abusing the children, but yet you're going to sit back and let your wife abuse the children more, just because you've forgiven. No, I mean, forgiveness actually has absolutely nothing to do with setting boundaries, right? Boundary work is completely separate. Like, I have forgiven my family, and what I'm doing on this show is allowing my inner child to get her voice out. A lot of people may not realize that. Like, I've forgiven my family. I really have no contact now with them. I had contact for the last 4 years with them, but it's not that I gave up on them. I made a decision that I was tired of them. I was tired of their attitudes, and I was tired of the lack of support and the lack of respect, because they continue to treat me like they did when I was a kid, see? So I refuse to take that garbage anymore. My 88-year-old dad was threatening to punch me in the nose, while he was living here with me, held a knife out at me, says horrible, horrible things about my mother. He has not changed, right? He has not changed. I've changed, like I'm working on becoming a decent human being, right? But he has not changed. And my sister's the same way. She's so dysfunctional and so codependent and so messed up. And I cannot allow her to drag me down with her, right? And see, I had to make this decision. This decision I've made before. When I was 21, 22 years old, I got off drugs. And I had to, in order to do that, I had to leave my friends behind. Because all of my friends were heavy-duty drug users. And we had been hanging out for years, doing drugs. Huge amounts of drugs, My life was all about drugs. That's what I did. I worked, but I did drugs the whole entire time. And, in order to get off the drugs and change my lifestyle, I had to drop my friends, which was very sad and very hard, because those were the people that helped me get through some harsh times when I was young. These were the people that were helping me out when I was not running away, but when I was just kicked out of my house and told that I was not wanted, and my mom was like, get out and don't come back. And I was like 16 years old, 15 years old. These were the kids that were there for me, And they were so messed up too because of the way they grew up. We were all just trying to make it and trying to survive. And, these people, as we turned into adults and young adults, the craziness just got worse, and the violence and the issues got worse, and I could see myself just dying in the streets in the gutter from a drug overdose or something, or being killed, murdered in some sort of a drug deal gone bad, or any number of things like that. I thought for sure I was going to die a violent, horrible, drug-related death, and I thought, this has got to stop. I have to. If I want to live a decent life, I'm going to have to cut these people off. And I literally told them. I mean, because they were my friends, I couldn't just dump them. Like, I told them, I said, I'm sorry, but I have to move on. I'm getting off drugs, and I have to move on. And they understood. Did they join me? No. They had their own lives, they had their own journey to make. But they were cool with it, because they knew that I was going to die. I was going to end up dead from those drugs, and they knew that. And many of them are dead because of those drugs, right? So I lost a lot of friends. But the thing is I had to make a decision at that point to to change my surroundings, to change the people I was hanging out with. So for some reason, I believe that I either have really an awesome guide with me all the time, helping me make these decisions. Whether if it's God, right? But there's something within me that allows me to see that when something is not right in my life, I have to make a change. So I have to believe that it's God who's guiding me, right? Because otherwise I would just have to believe that I'm extremely smart, because I do not allow people to mistreat me. And I really don't care who they are. And that's just from growing up the way that I did, So I don't have to hang around with my dysfunctional family now just because we're blood related. I have forgiven them, and I will continue to pray for them, and I would never think anything bad or wish anything bad for them. You know what I mean? Like, I hope the best for them, and I truly love them. They're my family, right? I don't hate them. That's the issue. 4 years ago, I hated my whole entire life. But I had to work through that and do that whole forgiveness thing, and allow myself, even forgive myself for the stuff that I have done, and asking forgiveness for those things. I want to be forgiven. I had to forgive them, and Does it mean I have to have them in my apartment hanging out with me, bringing me down? No, it certainly doesn't. They haven't changed. They're not on a healing journey with me, right? So that's the issue. I have a lot of people say stuff like that. Oh, maybe you just haven't forgiven, or, all of this. What I'm doing on this show is allowing my inner child's voice to be heard. It's more for me than anybody else. I mean, I'm happy people are tuning in, and I hope that it does help other people to realize they're not alone, and that there is help out there. And not to allow yourself to spiral down and be destroyed because of the past. Because my brothers did that, right? And it's very sad to watch that. And so, it's just a horrible thing to see people just destroy their lives because they were destroyed as children, right? But that's what was going on with me too. I was doing the same thing, and that's why really, for these shows, I'm just basically allowing my inner child's voice to come out, and she gets to finally have her say, which is, to narc on my parents, of what they did to me. As an adult, you would rarely hear me sit around and say, oh yeah, my mom used to beat me as a child. I wouldn't just go up to somebody and say that. But what I'm doing on these shows is allow my inner child to get out what she needs to get out, because that's my inner self from so long ago, where my voice was stifled. It was literally stifled. Like I was bound and gagged, you know what I mean? And physically as well as verbally, right? So, her voice was silenced, right? So many years ago. And I was part of that problem. I was part of that silence. I silenced her too. So I was one of those people that put a muzzle on her and said, you're not talking, because I got work to do. And I didn't allow her to, that inner part of myself to even catch a breath, And so that's really what I'm doing on this show, One Child to Be Survivor to Another, is to allow her to speak. She needs to have her say, so that, and actually what that does is allows me to connect with myself from so many years ago. You know what I mean? Where, because I allow her voice to come out, and it allows me to see how I was feeling and thinking at the time. When I was still going through all that stuff at the different stages. And so, it has nothing to do with forgiveness. I've already forgiven my family. You know what I mean? Even my brother who sexually used me, I've forgiven him. He killed himself. So, there you go. I don't think he killed himself because of that. He killed himself because he knew something else about one of my brothers who was murdered. And it was either that he knew who did it or that he felt bad or guilty or something. I don't know. But he didn't kill himself because of the situation with me. You know what I mean? No, that wasn't it. But I have forgiven him. Totally. I have to. Yeah. Because if I don't, if I'm going to be in unforgiveness, I'm just going to harbor hatred and all those ill will feelings that I had 4 years ago, which I've had to replace, with love, love for myself, love for life, love for people, love for my family, which is really harsh because they didn't show any love towards me. But I've had to learn how to, I'm not going to hang around with them, but do I love them? Absolutely. And so it's for my own protection that I cut myself off with them, so that I don't end up down in the drags again, in the dumps, just from allowing their psychosis to be around me anymore, because that's what I refuse to do. So that's the thing. We have to set up a good world for ourselves, and it is ultimately up to us. We have to make those choices to get ourselves help, or to hang around with the people that are going to help us and not hurt us, and to allow good people. If we're going to allow anybody in our lives, make sure that they're somebody who's decent, who's going to treat us right, because we certainly don't deserve to be mistreated our whole lives. That's absolutely ridiculous that people would think that that's the way life should be, but it's not. So we'll pick up here tomorrow, and hopefully my voice will be a little bit better tomorrow. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I appreciate it. And this website, please check this out, www.joy2meu, and that's joy to the number 2, meu.com. And it's Robert Burney's webpage. Is good stuff. And so we'll continue on looking at these positive affirmations here tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. If you can't cope, you make sure you reach out. You phone a crisis line, whatever you have to do. That's what I'm doing. You get to a point where you just can't do it. You phone a crisis line. You phone somebody. You get some help. You deserve to be here. You did not deserve to be treated the way you were if you're a survivor of abuse, and you certainly deserve to have a good life. And it starts with us. We have to make the right decisions and stick around. We have to make the right decisions and get some help, right? So have a great day, everybody, and take good care of yourselves, okay?